Gosh, thanks so much. Like Patty, the first thing I want to say is thank you. What a great thing to be here with you and to be in a place that the whole idea is to envision this as a conversation. And although you've got speakers, both in the video speakers who are talking about Bill, and those of us who've been invited to talk as Bill might have wanted to talk about some of these different themes, the point is we want to enter into a conversation that goes beyond this evening. That is a part of the life of Creighton University. And it's very moving hearing people who I know speak on these video clips and talk about how much they miss him. And I think all of us were affected, especially those of us who knew him well. Well, I like this image of the Ignite Talks that talks about being stimulating, innovative, and theological. That's the conversation that we want to have. A stimulating, innovative, theological conversation. It's the kind of university we want to be. And I want to underline that third term because while a lot of places might think of the first two, even a lot of businesses and other entities, when you bring in the theological dimension, you move the dial into another place, and some people get really nervous there. They say, no, that's not the world I live in. So that the first thing is I want to play with those three words and then weave them with the three words that were used in the flyer to talk about our friend Bill. That he was a man who exhibited unity of heart, mind, and soul. I think it's a great image of him, but it's also something that we long for. So we have images of the university, now images of something we long for in our own humanity. Now the weaving takes a third step of three. Excuse me, I went too fast there. This is the title that I chose for this reflection, A Gift. Questions, poetry, friendship. I'll come back to the main title, A Gift, which I borrow from the title of a poem that I'll mention at the end. But questions, poetry, friendship, can they be woven with these themes of being innovative, stimulating, theological, seeking a unity of mind, heart, and soul? And to do so, I would like to do this with some images. I've already had a few images playing behind the words. The photograph taken by a very good friend and a colleague of mine in California, Sister Julia Prince. And so you're going to see some of her photos taken in different parts of the world, some behind and some in the forefront. And the dialogue between poetry and photography, between image and word, is also part of the weaving. So let me begin with the image of an innovative heart. It's a heart that's open to the new. It's a heart that is creative. And it's a heart that asks questions. In a very real sense, while the questions we ask are really important, what's even more important is that we ask questions. And that in a certain sense, if we really ponder it, we ourselves in our living are a question to ourselves. And the questions never stop. They start early. What is that? The 1-year-old asks. And why? The 2-year-old asks. And on through our lives, we're probing. And we ask questions we can't answer. I think Patty's remarks got that really well. There's a way in which we live in the presence of a world where there is a more that's already here. We sometimes don't avert to it. In fact, we can learn whole ways to not be aware of the questions that are rising up within us. Well, this great theologian, Karl Rahner, wants to talk about who the God of our world is, and he starts with the word. He says that if the word God were to disappear from human languages, we would have forgotten the totality and its ground. And we would have forgotten that we'd forgotten. Now, Rahner's going to argue we can't get rid of the word. Even the word atheism contains the word God, the Greek word theos, in it. Because the word is not an object. It's not pointing to something and saying, well, I just don't believe that's there. No, what the word means in its in whatever language we're speaking, it's The name for that which is beyond all our searching. It's that horizon that we never completely exhaust. No matter how far we go, there is more. And that's what would disappear. What would happen if we could actually get rid of the word? Runner does a thought experiment, and this is what he concludes. So what would it be like if we actually achieved this? We can only say the human being would have ceased to be a human being. We would become the idol made in our own image and likeness. And what I love about this photograph from Salvador Dali's great exhibit in New York City is it's almost in protest against this disappearance of the human. Don't let us disappear. That's the first thing our questions teach us. But the conversation goes deeper. It does go into the mind. And Bill had a stimulating mind. And this university has a capacity for incredible, innovative, and stimulating scholarship and learning. But what's interesting is to think how deep in all of that is poetry. Tony, I loved your comments about music. And I've been thinking about this. I can't escape this thought that a number of anthropologists are beginning to speculate that before we ever spoke as a species, we sang. We sang before we spoke. And the singing, the music never goes away. And poetry is one of those places where language comes closest in its cadences and its variations to the beautiful music that you were playing for us and inviting us to think that this is part of who we are, the poetry of our lives. Bill got this too. You know this. He wrote poetry. He even had the theological chops to write an article for a book on Gregory of Nyssa, translation of Nyssa's homilies. All these really smart theologians from all over Europe, all over the world were gathered, and they very ponderous articles and tomes about Gregory of Nyssa. And what does Bill do? He writes a couple of poems, and he calls them forgeries. He's pretending to be Gregory. He uses Gregory's metaphors and images to speak Bill's faith. Here's just a short snippet. We are God's dark mirror, icons of the imageless. His darkness is the air we breathe, his silence, the echo we dream in. A fish may dart and flicker, hawks may wheel in the blue light, but we pulse with an alien, intimate infinity. It goes deeper. That book that Patty was talking about, the book about mystics, I learned this because Bill lived next door to me during his last sabbatical out in Berkeley 2 years ago. And he came and knocked on my door. He says, I hope it don't bother you with my reading. And I said, well, I could kind of hear you in there, but it's not bothering me. He says, well, you know, before I send a book off to the publisher, I feel a real need to reread it aloud. Because I want to make sure the words sound right, not just fit on the page. The man was a poet. He had a poet's heart. And this is one of the images that comes from the very end of that book, and I've rearranged it slightly as a poem. This really picks up on what you were saying, Patty. Mystics are pioneers who explore frontiers and limits of being human, who map tangles and perils that lie within the human heart. They peer into divine darkness to see a God-drenched world dizzying in its beauty, to remind us that we too have eyes to see those fragile, those ineffable beauties. Those beauties where drops of dew glisten like sapphires for a few fleeting moments in an inbreaking dawn through which most of us routinely sleep. The guy playing in the park, my photographer friend told me, everyone was passing by. And the music was awesome. And he didn't have a hat or a guitar case out or a trumpet case out for money. He just wanted to play. And she sat there and listened and watched people go by and caught that photograph. The ineffable is in us. And so from the questions through the poetry, here's the term that I think really captures the conversation we want to have. It talks about a theological soul of a university that is a community of friends, a place where you can have real friends. The one thing I would hope for you who are students, when you leave this place, I hope you learn a lot. I hope you find God. And I hope you leave here with friends that are friends for the rest of your lives. And I think that can happen, and I think it often does. And I think our best thinking and feeling and discoursing about our world and what it needs comes out of our friendships. So now I want to talk about the gift, because it's more than the gift of our interpersonal friendship, foundational as that is. It's that we are invited to become friends of this world. This planet that needs our friendship, that's strangling, that's air, it's not getting enough air into its planetary lungs. This world with its migrants and its refugees. 300 million of our brothers and sisters cannot go home and are living in places that aren't home and often are not wanted. And they are our brothers and sisters. Could we befriend our world? Only if we begin by befriending the questions. And so the gift takes us back to the beginning. This is a poem from the great poet, American poet, Denise Levertov. Just when you seem to yourself nothing but a flimsy web of questions, you are given the questions of others to hold in the emptiness of your hands. Songbird eggs that can still hatch if you keep them warm. Butterflies opening and closing themselves in your cupped palms, trusting you not to injure their scintillant fur, their dust. Do you see the butterflies? You are given the questions of others as if they were answers to all you ask. Yes, perhaps this gift is your answer. The heart and the soul of friendship with a world that wants us to love it. A community that wants our love to be a part of building it. You are given the questions of others. You are given the questions of others. You are given the questions of others. Perhaps this gift is the answer that you've been seeking. Look into their eyes. There is the gift. Thank you.